Hey everybody! This is Death by D4 and welcome to my first impressions of the Unearthed Arcana 2022 Wonders of the Multiverse. Yeah, I don't usually react to Unearthed Arcana that often on my channel, but hey, I might as well start now, why not? In this Unearthed Arcana, we've got the new race, the Glitchling, we got a new Cleric subclass, we've got some new backgrounds, we've got some new feats that feed back into those backgrounds, and we've got ourselves some new spells. Now for the larger most part, this is going to be me having a first impressions reaction to all of this. I'm not blind to reacting to all of this, I've actually already read over the document. But expect a bit of a less concise form of information coming out of me, as well as a less edited format overall. To start things off, the best thing about this Unearthed Arcana is that you could skip almost everything on this page, because none of it's actually important. It all just talks about basic information about the Unearthed Arcana and basic character information that's been regurgitated a lot over the most recent UAs that we've had coming out here. Anyway, we can start off with the Glitchling. Created by forces of the lower plane, glitchlings are winged human-like creatures made out of the merger of magic and machine. These explorers seek to learn all that they can about the multiverse and its creatures. Some glitchlings then carry what they learn back to lawful planes like Mechanus. Yeah, in general, you're basically playing as an alien robot person, which, as far as I can tell on Google Image searches, is completely original and has never been done before for the series because there's absolutely nothing that have any relevance to what this actually looks like. The number of quirks they provide for you for roleplay purposes are actually kind of cute. You could even have the single word responses of robotic speech if you really want to. Looking over the Glitchling's traits, the first thing that is to note is that you are a construct. Almost every race that you play as is a humanoid, and this one is a construct. It's sort of similar to the Autognome, which came out in an earlier UA, which comes with a little bit of baggage concerning that, with the fact that certain spells do and do not interact with constructs. So basically, like the paralyzing spells like Hold Person, Hold Monster, specifically target monsters and humanoids, so you get a little bit of immunity from that. However, certain healing spells and other things like that don't work on you the same way. With caveats, we'll get to those later. You're also medium sized, you have a walk speed of 30 feet, which is all standard. And then you get armored plating, which allows you to basically have an unarmored class of 14 plus your dexterity. A lot of people have been looking at this going like, wow, that's super broken. The only thing I can say about that is that that's not actually that new. Draconic sorcerers get 13 plus their dexterity modifier. Same goes with the lizard folk. At least I believe it's the same case. I believe the only thing that's different about this is that it's 14 and not 13, which is nice. I don't really know why it's slightly higher than the other ones if it actually is. I know that mage armor is also 13 plus your dexterity, so it's at least slightly higher than that as well. Balance chaos. When you make an attack roll or a save throw and roll a 9 or lower on a d20, you can balance out the chaos and treat the roll as a 10. You can balance the chaos a number of times equal to your proficiency bonus per long rest. I don't really know. That is a great feature. Now to keep in mind, it doesn't work on ability checks. It only works on attack rolls and saving throws, and they're only affected for you. But the ability to just say I rolled badly and then get an averaging middle roll is very good. It is especially good on saving throws because there are a lot of saving throws that you desperately do not want to fail, and having at least a 10 makes that very good. Now, of course, you can only do this proficiency bonus per long rest, so like 2 to 6 times basically, but that is just obscenely good. So you're getting bonus on armored AC and you're getting that, but the main thing that I've actually had seen pointed out to me is the fact that it says saving throws, which means that it applies to concentration checks, I believe, because it's a constitution saving throw, and it also applies to death saving throws, and I can definitely apply to death saving throws because it doesn't say that you have to use your reaction or you have to be not incapacitated, which means that you can absolutely do this. And if that's the case, then at max level you can live a death blow 6 times, which is likely going to change. Next, I've got Living Construct. You are created with the benefit of several spells to preserve life but don't normally affect constructs: Cure Wounds, Healing Wound, Mass Cure Wounds, Mass Healing Word, and Spare the Dying. Those are just conveniences, honestly, at that point. There are other healing spells beyond it, like there's the spell Heal, but that's like a 9th level spell if I remember correctly. And all of those are just the ones that most players are going to use and are the most common healing spells across most of the board, so you can just gain those benefits from it. I find it a bit strange. I remember the Autognome has a similar spell to this as well, and they're leaning a bit into that. But the Autognome also has the ability to use Mending to regain its hit points, which I thought was actually a very interesting feature to try and build into that. But at the same time, they're also trying to rate around the fact that you are a construct. And I don't really understand why they're trying to do this. Is it a convenience that a lot of players would absolutely do? Because I feel like most players are just going to look at it and go like, oh, I can't use healing spells? Oh, well then it just never plays this class. So they're trying to basically say, no, you can still use your healing spells. But it feels weird because they could probably do more with this than what they're actually doing. By the way, being brutally honest, I don't usually do this in my videos, but that's genuinely the way that it is. It is extremely good that you can get these healing spells, but with the fact that you are a construct, I would kind of wish that it'd be a little bit different. The same kind of thing extends to undead races, which is why I believe a lot of the undead races were undead and humanoid, or something of those things when they came out in the Dampier, Hexblood, and Reborn. But I'm pretty certain those were just humanoid and weren't actually undead races. Lastly, this race gets vestigial wings. When you move, you can engage your wings, gain a flying speed equal to your walking speed to the end of your current turn. If you're still aloft, then you fall. You can use trade number times equal to your proficiency bonus and regain them all after a long rest. So basically, the Ascendant Dragon Monk is now just crying because its 6th level feature is now a feature that this race just gets by default. And I'm not gonna lie, there's just the ability to fly for one turn is nice. It can have many different applications in and outside of combat, especially because this one doesn't require you to use your bonus action, you just get it for free. Another reason why the monk is probably crying staring at this. And here's the thing I don't really get. Races can just fly. Races can also have temporary flying. What I don't understand is why does this race have the ability to fly, the ability to mitigate middling rolls, and unarmored AC? And it's all balanced out by the fact that you are a construct that can't take normal healing. Oh, except you can. Oh, and you might have noticed that I actually completely missed a feature right in here. Yeah, that was on purpose just to see if you guys noticed the fact that this thing still gets more. There's Order of Mind, which gives you advantage on Wisdom, Insight checks, and saving throws to avoid the charm condition on yourself, which is totally fine. That is actually a thing that should be on a race. It's just a very niche kind of thing, but is a benefit to you in every way that you possibly can think of. I only have a concern with the fact that there's a lot of stuff front-loading this race, and I'm not gonna lie, I'm already unhappy with, like, people didn't like Aarakocra, and I do like the way that they kind of balanced them out a little bit, made them a little bit more interesting in the multiverse monsters. But then they added the Owlin, or the Owlfolk, and it's just like, why? It's just like, in most cases, that was just better Aarakocra, and it's not like Aarakocra needed something that was better than it. And this feels like we're encroaching on the area of this race, but just better than most races. Ultimately, do I still like the idea of the race? Yeah, absolutely. It's a robot race. I'm not going to bash that. Heck, I'm looking forward to both the Ooze and the Insectoid races coming on Spelljammer. I just hope that they're actually still a good race as well. I don't need the race to be giga broken to be interested in it. As long as it's an interesting concept with interesting mechanics behind it that support the gameplay, I'm fine with it. I don't need it to be so crazy front-loaded is all I'm saying. Now, as for the Cleric subclass that we get the Fate Domain, which is actually a very interesting concept, and I like the idea a whole lot. The whole idea about Fate in D&D is the fact that you are able to, kind of similar to the Divination Wizard, you are manipulating the outcome of die rolls because dice in D&D is the actual physical game mechanic of Fate. It is pure randomness that is uncontrolled and is completely chaotic, so being able to manipulate that is a great buy-in. First up, you get your domain spells, which you get straight away at first level, and you get these automatically like every other domain spell. You get Dissonant Whispers, Heroism, See Invisibility, Warding Bond, Beacon of Hope, Clairvoyance, Death Ward, Divination, Commune, and Gesh. I like basically all of these, and I really had to ask myself, why the heck is Gesh on here? That is a mind-controlling manipulative spell. And the only way I could possibly imagine why this is on here is because that spell basically mirrors how fate is handled in things like Greek mythology. If you think about the fates there, they really tried to bind people to doing specific outcomes, which is basically what the spell does. It binds you and makes you do a particular task, or you take a large amount of damage for it. But in all honesty, most people kind of relate this to Warlockian Eldritchy mind control than fate binding. So it's a bit of a stretch in flavor there. I still like it. I think it still could work. It's just it was a surprise to see it here because I had to genuinely stop and think about it. Things like otherwise like Commune, Divination, Death Ward, Beacon of Hope, Clairvoyance, especially Clairvoyance, See Invisibility, Warding Bond, Heroism, and Dissonant Whispers, all of these can work in there. Even Dissonant Whispers to some extent, which is just like, I don't know, hearing the influences of fate upon you. I can see all of these working just fine, and they're all decent spells that you can just get for free. You're probably going to find uses for a bunch of them while you're playing the game. And for those of you who are wondering where the Augury spell was in all of this, it's actually in Omen's Importance. So basically, with this feature, you can cast the Augury spell without expending a spell slot, and when you cast this way, you do not need verbal or somatic components or material components. So basically, you get to cast it basically no matter what. Once you cast a spell in this long way, you can't do it until you finish a long rest. In addition, until you finish a long rest, when you cast a divination spell that includes a chance for the DM to give you a no answer or a random reading, such as Augury, Commune, or Divination, you reduce the chance of that happening by 25%. That is really, really weirdly worded. Basically, it means you have a 25% less chance of something weird going wrong once per long rest when you cast these spells. So basically, that free casting that you get of Augury on this thing, you are guaranteed that it will tell you something useful the first time you do it. And to be fair with this thing, you actually can't cast this with spell slots, if you guys didn't notice that while reading through this. It doesn't say. You get the one free casting. It does not add it as a cleric spell list to you. You cannot use it with spell slots. It's only free without one. So you get one guaranteed casting of Augury. And if you get better Commune spells, like, you know, similar to how you get Commune here at higher levels, then this benefits it as well. Honestly, it's a very roleplay-centric kind of thing. It pairs great with going into the Fate thing. I think it's a great idea. It works well, even if it is a little stingy, but it is a first level feature, so I kind of understand why. Ties That Bind is the other first level feature that you also get, where So let me just read this really quickly. As an action, you touch an object or creature, then you magically tie a strand of fate to yourself to it for up to 1 hour, or until you use the feature again. An unwilling creature must succeed on the save throw, so basically you can bind yourself and this to an unwilling creature, but it has to make a save against your spell save DC. And once you are bound to it, you know where the creature is as long as it's on the plane of existence with you, and you know what direction it's heading in if it's actually in motion. So basically it's a tracking spell. Also, once per turn, whenever you cast a spell using a spell slot that deals damage or restores hit points to the target of your binding, you roll a d6 and add it to the extra damage or healing equal to number rolled. And you can use this feature known as equal to your proficiency bonus, recharging after a long rest. So basically, all I can imagine is, as I punch my microphone, that this is just Ties That Bind is basically just made out of the tears of hunters, or not hunters, this is made out of the tears of rangers who like Hunter's Mark. This is basically just Hunter's Mark, but it works the way that Rangers actually wanted it to do. It does not require concentration. I mean, it's not necessarily free, because those ones, I believe, you don't have to make a save to actually mark an enemy creature with it. So yes, it has a save involved with it, which is a little bit nonchalantly. But this has the benefit of not only helping deal extra damage, but also has the ability to deal extra healing to your bound target. I don't hate this feature at all, but the only thing about it that makes it feel like a fate-driven class is the fact that you can track the target. It's almost a bit weird that it deals extra damage and hit points, because what I feel like is that you bind yourself to something and you can help sway the whims of fate upon that target. This is not dealing the whims of fate. This is just hitting and healing the thing better, which I think breaks the theme a little bit. Is it a good feature? Yeah, absolutely. But also, like I said, this feels like a very Ranger feature to have on here, but it's on a Cleric of a Prophecy, which I don't really understand why it is on here. Otherwise, in all general for the first level features for the class, they're fine. And that's really about it. Next up, we got your second level feature, which is your Channel Divinity, which is Strands of Fate. You can use your Channel Divinity to manipulate the Strands of Fate and weave around other individuals. As a bonus action, you enter into this state for up to 1 minute until you lose concentration, as if you were concentrating on a spell. For the duration, whatever creature that you can see makes an attack roll or ability check, you can use reaction to give the roll advantage or disadvantage, your choice. So I've heard a lot of people say that this is actually kind of crazy nutty, and they don't like this at all, because this is basically like one step away from being Silvery Barbs on a Cleric on a short rest recharge multiple times a day, because a Cleric does get multiple Channel Divinities, unlike the Paladin. It is for 1 minute. It does require your concentration, and it also chews up your reaction, which is pretty free on a Cleric, but it still costs you all of this stuff. It's on a short rest recharge again, and you have limited charges of it until you get to much higher levels. And it only applies to attack rolls and ability checks. It does not apply to saving throws. Personally, I'm okay with this. And I do think that the advantage and disadvantage sway does lean a bit into the whims of fate kind of way, because you're helping manipulate the die roll beyond just giving it like a predetermined outcome. I do think it's fine. I don't think the massive amount of hysteria that I've seen come up around this is entirely warranted. But at the same time, I don't know a lot of people are going to be super interested in this feature, because, I mean, a lot of players don't really like the Channel Divinities on Clerics as far as I'm understanding it. And this one is extremely boring sounding, especially because advantage, disadvantage. Well, you're either going to bind yourself, which there is no save on this at all. You can literally bind this to an enemy creature if you want to, and there's nothing they can do to stop you. You can just bind to them and give them disadvantage repeatedly, especially if they're going to target you with anything. Or you can bind this to your Rogue or Paladin and constantly keep giving them advantage on one of their attacks, especially the Rogue, who really only gets one attack that they can do. So for that alone, I think that this is kind of nutty, and once people sort of fall into buffing one particular person or debuffing enemies repeatedly, that's all they're really going to do with it, and I don't really know in practice how well it's going to work. Ultimately, should this be any stronger? No, it's second level, are you crazy? But I still like it. I still think it fits the theme, albeit slightly well. I'm weirded out by how it's actually going to work in play. And I know a lot of people don't like it initially as it's presented. At 6th level, you get Insightful Striking. As a bonus action, you choose one creature within 30 feet of yourself. You can grant the magic a brief vision into the future of the target's fences. Until the end of your next turn, you gain one of the following benefits of your choice. The next time you make an attack roll against the target, roll a d6 and add the number to the total. And the next time the target makes a saving throw, you can roll a d6 and subtract the number from the total. You can do this number times equal to proficiency bonus and recharge all after a long rest. Okay, so I'm not gonna lie. The +6 to an attack roll is pretty nice, and this only applies to you. But I'm not gonna lie, the d6 against the saving throw is what really scares me. Especially because there's no save stopping you from doing all of this, and although it does slightly eat into your Channel Divinity, which you just need a bonus action to get it started, by the way, but it can technically stack with this as well. You could, for example, Actually, I just realized this doesn't stack with it at all because this does not eat into saving throws, so it does not affect this ability, or it does not affect this ability here, and it eats into attack rolls, but one of these only applies to you, and this one cannot apply to you. So this doesn't actually stack with this whatsoever. Keeping that in mind, a d6 to your attack roll is still very nice if you really have one attack that you really want to have hit, especially if it's a spell. The d6 save, though, is a lot more impactful, I feel, because, I mean, to be fair, a d6 reducing it from your saving throw is basically, for the most part, negating the proficiency bonus to your save. That and this can also stack with disadvantage. This can also stack with Bane. This can also stack with Mind Sliver. There's a lot of extra debuffing saving throw things that you can stack on all of this at the same time, but largely that would require synergy from your fellow party members, which at that point, that's kind of fine in my regard. If you need to stack a bunch of different abilities across multiple different characters in order to get one particularly good outcome to happen, then I think it's totally fine. Because yeah, you're going to end up with players that do that, but I mean, at least they're talking to each other and working together. And I think that that's totally fine. As long as not one character is able to do the whole thing by themselves, I don't think it's a little bit egregious. That said, the entire theme about being able to make an attack land more accurately or a saving throw stick a little bit better, I think does lean a little bit more into the fate theming as well. And the number of charges that you get off of it is pretty generous as well. Ultimately, it's just a pretty solidly good feat, albeit I agree with some other people that a lot of these dice manipulation ones that they're doing here, they're all doing it in slightly different ways, but they are a little bit slightly bland. At least the options for you are at least very good. Next up at 8th level, you get Potent Spellcasting, which is exactly what you expect it is. Wisdom modifier to your cantrips, which is totally fine for this class. And finally, your capstone feature is Visions of the Future, which I think is genuinely crazy. You can cast the Foresight spell without expending a spell slot, and when you do so in this way, the spell only lasts for 1 minute instead of, the 8 hours that it defaults to normally. And once you do it in this way, you can't do it again until you finish a long rest. In all genuineness, I think that this is a crazy way to do the spell, but there is a little bit of weirdness involved with this. The Foresight spell, for those of you that don't know, basically means you have advantage on basically any d20 roll that you make for 8 hours with your character, and it's a 9th level spell. So this is basically giving you another 9th level spell slot to use, specifically for this Foresight spell. However, Foresight is normally 8 hours, and this is now only for 1 minute. So 1 minute, as a subclass trait for an extra 9th level spell, I think is totally fine. But there is one extra little thing here that this doesn't actually talk about, and that is the fact that Foresight takes a minute to cast, which means that if this is being used primarily before combat, or if it's being used outside of combat, then it's fine. But you can't pop this in the middle of combat. It just genuinely won't work. You'll never get 10 turns to be able to do that. So if you can organize it correctly, then it's very good. However, I too kind of agree with some people that if you wanted to, make this the Foresight spell in its entirety, and it's just locked to that. And you just get that for free. Get another 9th level spell for free. Because Foresight isn't on clerics normally. The only cleric that can get is the Arcana cleric. Like, normal clerics have no way of getting this spell. Either that, or just make it that it's the 1 minute casting of this, but just allow us to cast it as an action instead of 1 minute. By making it so that way we can do that, it will genuinely make it so that way it has way more applicable uses and feels way more suitable as a capstone feature because it is an extremely nerfed 9th level spell. So making it so it has a broader application of uses so that way it actually can be used properly, I think is otherwise fair. Otherwise, I still think it's a crazy feature overall, and it definitely, Foresight definitely leans into the manipulation of dice and the prophetic nature of the domain spell. I think it's a divination spell in itself entirely, so, going into Fate makes total sense. Ultimately, though, kind of spooky. I just hope it is something that actually works, because if it's primarily going to be used outside of combat and that's their intention behind it, it means that this is going to be something that a lot of people probably don't like then. So now we've got all of the backgrounds that come up here, and to be fair, I'm going to be muddling over a lot of this because these are a lot of different backgrounds, they all do a lot of different things, they all have a lot of different feats that get tied into them, and I'm probably going to be reading a lot of this out of order because they're all very poorly organized in this document. The first background they get is the Gate Warden, which is a person that sort of protects interplanar gates. Get Persuasion, Survival, just skill proficiencies. You get 2 choices, though it's weird that it's any 2, but it strongly leans you into Abyssal, Celestial, or Infernal. I think that's super funny, they never do this. And you get a variety of equipment, which is all largely for flavor text, which, to be fair, is some of this kind of fun in there? Yes, but it's only if you care about it. That's why I'm not really going over this sort of stuff. Building Gate Warden Carrot, this is all flavor. Personality traits, this is all flavor. Suggested characteristics, that's all flavor. Gate Warden trinkets, again, all flavor. More trinkets, all flavor. So, to be fair, as a background for this one, did I miss something? Yes, I did miss something. It's the Scion of the Outer Planes feat. That is what you're getting largely out of this, which we'll read up to later. Next one is the Giant Foundling, which is, I believe this ties back into the old Unearthed Arcana that they had, which was about giants in general and such like that. So basically, you grew up in a place that's like very prehistoric or is like just surrounded by giants and fearsome behemoths and hulking dinosaurs. Basically, this kind of ties into the giant stuff as well as even the prehistoric stuff from the druid that has the dinosaur pet that they introduced in that UA as well. You get Intimidation Survival, that's appropriate. Any 2 languages of your choice. A backpack, sadly so, small stone sprig reminds you of your home, pouch contain gold. That's pretty nothing, honestly, but at least the backpack's kind of nice to get. And your feature is Strike the Giants. You gain the Strike the Giants feat, which again, we'll go over later. Planar Philosopher. If you are a Velociraptor, unfortunately, that's the wrong one for you. You get Arcana and Persuasion, makes sense. You get 2 languages, that makes sense. You get Common Clothes, Pouch of Cane Gold, Compromise of Coins of different worlds across the plains. Who knows if they're actually worth anything, but it says 10 GP, so I bet it is. Features Conviction. You gain a Sign of the Outer Plains, which is presented later in this document. I believe that's the same one that I just saw in the other ones, so that's a bit weird. I literally had to scroll back up over the other document here and just check and see, and this is literally just the exact same feat with very minor flavor text differences and very minor setup over here that's different. Basically, the largest difference you're getting is you're getting Arcana and Persuasion here, instead of Persuasion and Survival. Wow, what a difference. Rune Carver. So this is a new background. I don't know if this was a background or a feat, or maybe they're changing things from how it was presented in the last UA. I never went back and checked, but hey, it's a background here, so let's take a look at it. History, Perception, Giant, and 1 other language. That all makes sense. Artisan Tools, Whetstone, Common Clothes, Pouch Canadian Gold, all makes sense. You gain the Rune Carver Apprentice feat. I believe that actually was in the last UA, but we'll see if it's any kind of different here. Honestly, runes in general, I think are very good fantasy stuff to try and go into, so I'm just kind of curious to see how well it's going to be implemented. Feats. So there is a lot of feats. This is the large bulk of this entire UA, honestly. So let's just take a quick look and see what we actually get. Agent of the Order, prerequisite of 4th level, Sign of the Outer Plains, Lawful Outer Plains. Oh, so this is actually locked to a specific outer plane alignment? Okay, yeah, sure. You get ability score increased by 1, and once per turn, you get Stasis Strike. When you damage a creature that you can see within 60 feet of yourself, which I guess that means that this works with spells and weapons, because it's not saying that's an attack roll in particular. You can deal an extra 1d8 force damage to the target and must succeed on a wisdom saving throw made against the ability score that you increase the stat with. On a failed save, it gets restrained by spectral bindings until the start of your next turn. These bindings manifest as chains, gears, encasing stones, blah, 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 blah. You can use this benefit a number of times equal to proficiency bonus per long rest. This is a really cool ability, honestly. Like, I feel like a lot of martial characters, and honestly, even spellcasters could take good advantage of this because it allows you to just attach restraints as a part of any attack that you land. And the fact that you can tie this basically to any stat you want, not even a spellcasting stat, just means that this is very, very good in general. It kind of makes sense that it's 4th level only though. Yeah, it's just, in general, this is a really good feat, and I think a lot of people, especially martials, are going to enjoy this a lot. Baleful Scion. Prerequisite 4th level Scion of the Outer Plains, Evil Outer Plane, feat. You can channel the cosmic forces of evil that cause pain to invigorate your being. You can choose one of the actions despite the malignant connection they gain with the following benefits. Increase the ability score by 1. Life-draining grasp. Oh, that sounds fun. Once per turn, whenever you hit a creature with a melee weapon attack, you can deal necrotic damage to it. Necrotic damage equals to 1d6 plus your proficiency bonus, and you regain number of hit points equal to necrotic damage dealt. You can use this weapon a number of times equal to your proficiency bonus per long rest. So, weirdly enough, I believe this technically stacks with, like, the life drain that, like, Dampier can do, so you could just go in all on that. Either way, I think that, like, as if you wanted, like, a life-draining proper hit where you actually regain hit points for it instead of the Dampier thing, which I believe is like a little bit misconstrued that way to how it kind of works, at least what the expectations people actually had for it. Just getting +1 on your skills, getting a basic life-draining attack that you can use a limited number of times. I think that's a fun feat that people are going to enjoy using, try and build up the flavor of the character, because I don't think it's that strong. I think it's just literally just a tiny bit of little extra healing that you can do. It's going to be more impactful at lower levels, but I think it is just genuinely a fun idea. Cartomancer, which is 4th level Sorcerer, Warlock, or Wizard class, so this one's actually more opened up than the other ones, doesn't have a tie into a background. And you learn how to channel magic through a playing card deck, which kind of reminds me a lot of the, oh god, what was it? I covered it. It was the Wildcard Rogue. It was specifically for the League of Legends tie-in for D&D, and it's giving me a lot of reminiscent feelings of that. First up, you get Card Focus, which allows you to use the playing card deck as a spellcasting focus, which is nice, and whenever you cast a spell that deals damage, you roll a d4, and you gain a bonus to 1 damage roll made to the spell when you roll that. I believe the bonus applies to 1 creature of your choice that you can see damaged by the spell. You can use this benefit on equal to proficiency bonus per long rest. So basically, you can use a playing card deck, and when you cast it, you just deal a tiny bit of extra damage to it, which isn't a really whole lot to be excited about. Card Tricks. You learn Prestidigitation. It's just that, you learn Prestidigitation. It's a great flavor spell. You just get it for free with this feat. That's kind of nice. Hidden Ace. This is kind of where everything gets a little bit spooky. When you finish a long rest, you can choose one spell that you know and imbue it into your card. It must be a card that has a casting time of 1 action, so that limits it quite a lot, and it must be of a level that you have less than equal to your proficiency bonus. So at maximum, this is a 6th level spell that you're tucking away in here. While the card is imbued with a spell, you can then use your bonus action to flourish the card and cast the spell within it, and immediately it loses its magic. So you get 1 bonus action casting of any action spell that you want. That's kind of spooky, but do keep in mind, a lot of people are probably thinking that they can do this to try and throw out 2-leveled spells in one turn. That's not true. You still can't do that. Whenever you cast a spell with a bonus action, the only other spells you can cast for the entire rest of your turn are cantrips. So if you're going to do this, you largely want to be able to do it if you want to use your action to do literally anything else, or if there's specifically a cantrip you want to pair with it. So for example, if you had Mind Sliver and you wanted to cast another spell as a bonus action on top of it that gets the benefit of Mind Sliver right away afterwards, you could then do it this way. Also keep in mind that technically, since it has to be a level that is lower than your proficiency bonus, that technically means that cantrips count as that, because cantrips are technically 0-level spells. Why you would need to cast a cantrip as a bonus action, I'm not entirely sure, and you only get this once per long rest, so it wouldn't necessarily do you a whole lot of good doing it that way, but hey, I think that's a really nice thing to couple with it, because this is all, remember, you get all of this with this one feat. So, yeah, a decent feat. I'm not entirely sure if it's 4th level necessary, but at the very least it's not bound to a specific background, so I'll give it that much. Cohort of Chaos, 4th level sign of the Outer Planes, Chaotic Evil Outer Plane. Chaotic Evil Outer Plane, it's just Chaotic Outer Plane, what the heck's wrong with me? You can channel the cosmic forces of chaos to drive the multiverse towards freedom or disarray. Your actions still choose that, but you gain the benefits. Increase your ability score by 1. Chaotic Flare. When you roll a 1 or a 20 on an attack roll or saving throw, the magical chaos flows through you and you roll in the Chaotic Flare's chart and determine what happens. The flare lasts until the end of your next turn, and a new flare does not occur until after the first flare ends. So you can never stack these flares together, so you can never try and do that. And also keep in mind, it only triggers on a 1 or a 20, which is about 10% of any rolls that you're ever going to make. It also is on an attack roll or a saving throw, so not an ability check, so you don't have to worry about like something like that involving like wild magic kind of sorcerer vibes of PTSD of something horrible exploding out of nowhere. This is your table of chaotic flares, which allows you to get Disruption Field, Battle Fury, Unbound, or Wailing Winds. Disruption Field is a 10-foot sphere centered around you. Every creature other than you that starts its turn within the area or that moves into the area the first time on its turn, remember because it's until the end of your next turn, so this goes for a little while, takes 1d8 force damage. It's just a damaging AoE around you, and it does unfortunately hit your allies because it doesn't specify otherwise. So yeah, just a little bit of a damaging AoE around you for 10 feet. That's not terrible. Battle Fury, the creature of your choice that you can see is filled with Reckless Fury. The creature has advantage on all of its attack rolls and disadvantage on ability checks. So this is a weird double-edged sword. I think you're fine with the disadvantage on ability checks, because I mean, like, it's not like I feel like you're ever gonna have this come up by accident and then have to disadvantage somebody. And the attack rolls, getting advantage, that's pretty nice. Especially because it doesn't have the caveat of like Reckless Attack where you get advantage on attacks coming in against you until the end of your turn, and this works against any creature that you can see. So there's no range on this either, so that's quite good. Unbound, when you move, you can use all of your movement to teleport at once, along with all of your equipment that you're wearing or carrying, up to a distance equal to used to the unoccupied space that you can see. So basically, instead of moving until the effect of this wears off, you teleport any amount of the distance instead of moving. So that basically allows you to avoid an opportunity attack or go through a wall, more or less. At the very least, there's no way to go off target, so I think it's a pretty good ability. It's just a matter of when this pops up, if you're going to be able to use this, I don't know. At the very least, you could definitely use this to get up somewhere during a battle if you need to get up somewhere. That could be more advantageous to you. And finally, you get Howling Winds. Howling Winds that swirl around you in a 60-foot radius. You and any creature within the radius has disadvantage on Wisdom saving throws. Considering there's a lot of spells that use Wisdom saving throws, and it says you and any creature in the radius, so this does unfortunately affect your allies as well. And it is a 60-foot radius, so that is a huge area. And it also, unfortunately, does affect you. I'm just noticing that. So this is just basically a huge, everybody just kind of suffers for a little while, or it's an opportunistic thing where you try to take advantage of the situation because Wisdom Saving have a disadvantage. Weirdly enough, this doesn't impact perception whatsoever, but hey, there you go. Ultimately, is that really it? Oh yeah, the other thing here, and I completely forgot to look at this, was that you could forcibly release the Chaotic Flare as a bonus action, and you can just roll it whenever you want. You can do that a number of times equal to your proficiency bonus, recharging after a long rest. So, weirdly enough, the effect that it triggers on a 1 or 20, that is infinite. That will always trigger on a 1 and 20. The ability for you to trigger it on command as a bonus action, that's all that's limited. So, Ultimately, I don't know if this is still a 4th level feature. This honestly feels kind of like how Wild Magic should have kind of worked for the Wild Magic Sorcerer, because it has like the randomness element to it as well that's more common than rolling and waiting for the DM basically to say that you're allowed to do it. You also get the ability score increase. All of these effects here have some way of being utilized for some interesting way, and the fact that you can then roll on it randomly there as a bonus action, it kind of makes sense that you can't pick the outcome still, but at least you can trigger it on command a certain number of times. I do like it. I don't know how good it genuinely is. That doesn't mean I still don't like this. I think it is an interesting idea that they could definitely do a lot with. Ember of the Fire Giants, 4th level, Strike of the Giants, Fire Giant feat. Oh, you actually need another feat to actually be allowed to get this, so chances are Strike of the Fire Giants will probably be weaker than this. Get an ability score increase to your Strength or Constitution or Wisdom. So limited to your options there, but all of those are still really good options in general. Leaning more into the martials, I can say, with the Strength and Constitution. You gain fire resistance. Well, that's a good resistance to gain. A lot of races gain fire resistance as well, but if you're not one of them, then you get it as well. And then you get Searing Ignition. When you take the attack action on your turn, you can replace a single attack with a magical burst of flame. Each creature of your choice within 15 feet of you that you can see must make a dexterity saving throw. DC equal to whatever the skill you use to increase it with. And on a failed save, the creature takes fire damage equal 1d8 plus your proficiency bonus and is blinded. Actually blinded until the start of your next turn. On a successful save, it's half damage and isn't blinded. You can do that. Number 10 is equal to proficiency bonus per long rest. That's kind of fun. It feels like it's kind of competing with the same kind of grounds as the breath weapons do from the Dragonborn, and I don't remember entirely if there are feats actually from that draconic stuff that also allows you to do a breath weapon. I don't believe so. But it definitely feels like it's kind of giving you that kind of AoE conal slam with your weapon. Oh wait, it's not even a cone, is it? Yeah, it's actually a sphere. I just realized it. It's actually you genuinely just cause an explosion at your feet. That's actually really cool. Now, ultimately, the damage does not scale really well at all because your proficiency bonus means it's going up from 2 to 6, which means that you're not even getting like a full double the die's worth of damage out of this. And with the fact that save throw means it can't even crit, which means you're not getting any more damage out of this whatsoever. But you're mainly blinding people around you. And the other thing that's worth noting, I just say here, each creature of your choice, which means that you can have your allies here and just blow up, and then all your allies around you, totally fine. It only hits your enemies. So this is actually a really good feat. Genuinely a very good feat, and definitely helps give additional control with the blind condition to marshals, especially if they want to blow up and blind the person nearby them and then go in with their extra attacks upon them with advantage. I think it genuinely has a lot of good use there if you want to lean into the very fiery warrior aspects. Fury of the Frost Giant, 4th level Strike of the Giants Frost Giant feat. So it's basically the frost flavor, whatever we're about to read next. Strength, Constitution, or Wisdom, literally the same ones as the last time. Gain resistance to cold damage, literally the same thing as the last time, but the cold damage, I feel like cold damage is about as common as fire, so it's still a good damage type to take. Probably maybe not as common as fire, but you're still not going to hate it. Frigid Retaliation, immediately after a creature you can see within 30 feet of you hits you with an attack roll and deals damage. I guess the caveat, it has to actually deal damage. I guess I kind of appreciate that with some of the shenanigans people figured out in other things. You can use reaction to retaliate with a Conjure Blast of Ice. Creature makes a Constitution saving throw against blah 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 blah. On a failed save, it takes 1d8 plus your proficiency bonus, so literally the same damage as the last one you read, cold damage, and its speed is halved until the end of its next turn. It uses reaction sometimes to go proficiency bonus, recharging after a long rest. So this is like Hellish Rebuke, but just cold damage, and it doesn't really hurt quite as much as Hellish Rebuke. Actually, let me just check. How much does Hellish Rebuke do? Hellish Rebuke is just a tiny bit weaker. It does scale with its damage output because it's 2d10 and it upcasts, but this is 1d8 plus your proficiency bonus, so it is quite a bit weaker. That said, Hellish Rebuke has no secondary effect, and this causes you to lose half your speed, which, to be fair, if a creature is able to actually deal damage to you with an attack roll, which, keep in mind, this doesn't work on spells because of that, unless the spell is a spell attack roll. So if it's a saving throw and it deals damage to you, it won't trigger. It has to be an attack roll. But if a creature is able to do that to you, and the creature gets knocked prone by any means, and you use this to have its speed, then that means the creature literally can't move on its next turn because it has to spend the rest of its half of its speed to actually stand back up, assuming it doesn't lose any more of its speed beyond that, then it literally can't stand up. So there's some interesting control that can be done with this. The only thing I have to admit, and this is a weird thing for me to think about this, is that if you're slowing down a creature, and it has to do an attack roll against you to deal damage for you to trigger this reaction, more often than not, that means that it's going to be a melee attack, which means the creature's already in your face, which I don't see the value of having its speed. Because you don't really need to have the speed of a creature that's actually already in your face. You kind of need a way to make it so that way you can step away from it, if anything. Now, on the off chance that you're using ranged attacks against this thing, there's not really a value to have its speed because it's already hitting you with ranged attacks, which means it's going to be able to keep hitting you with ranged attacks. So there's not really a point to have its speed again. So even though this makes perfect logical thematic sense, I don't really think this is actually all that good. I don't know, maybe the feat that it pairs with is also makes it a little bit better. We'll see when we read it. Guile of the Cloud Giant, which is the Cloud Giant flavor of everything that we're going through right now. Dexterity, Constitution, and Charisma, so different stats than the other ones, that's for sure. Cloudy Escape, when a creature that you can see hits you with an attack roll, you use your reaction to give yourself resistance to the attack's damage, and then you teleport to an unoccupied space that you can see within 30 feet. And you can do this a number of times to equal your proficiency bonus. Oh, it's half your proficiency bonus rounded up. Oh, okay, so it's not even as many charges. Okay, well that kind of makes sense, because being able to just have the damage of something that you take and then immediately teleport 30 feet away is very good. This is a very, very good feat. This is kind of like having Misty Step on a reaction to be able to get yourself out of dodge and avoid a large instance of damage that might take you out otherwise. And having it be half your proficiency bonus rounded up does mean that scales a little bit better than rounded down, because otherwise you'd be down with 2 charges for like 1 and 2 charges for like most of your campaign life. Either way, doesn't have the damage resistance that the other ones do, but this alone, that's very good. That is a very good feat that I'm sure a lot of spellcasters would enjoy. Keenness of the Stone Giant, prerequisite 4th level, Strike of the Giant, Stone Giant feat. So that is a Stone Giant feat of everything that we've been looking at so far. Increase your Strength, Constitution, and Wisdom. That's leaning back into what we've seen before. Stone Throw, as a bonus action, you touch a rock and you fit in the palm of your hand and imbue it with magic. Hey, it's Magic Stone the cantrip. Well, the rock is imbued with magic and you're wielding it. It is a magic range weapon which you're proficient with and has the thrown property and the normal range feet of 60 feet and a long range of 180 feet. That is a good amount of range for a rock. I'm not gonna lie. I think even Magic Stone doesn't go that far. On hit, the rock deals 1d10 bludgeoning damage. Unfortunately, it doesn't have any of your modifiers in there as well, but whatever. Wait, ranged magic weapon, 1d10 bludgeoning damage, but it doesn't say that you deal any of your spellcasting modifier. I would like to know if that's actually the case, because I feel like because it's saying a ranged magic weapon, that this should technically use the stat bonus of what you're using to make the weapon attack with, because this isn't a spell attack, this is a ranged weapon attack. So do you get your strength out of this, or your dexterity if it's finesse? No, it doesn't have finesse, it's just thrown. So I guess I would like that to say that and there, just because that would make this feel a little bit better than just a random 1d10, because that means it's anywhere between 1 to 10 damage, which isn't very good. If the target is a creature, you must succeed on a strength save or made against the skill, or be knocked prone, which is actually kind of nice. You literally just yeet a rock at somebody and knock them off their butt. That's very funny. The magic remains in the rock until you hit somebody with it or you finish a long rest, and you can beat a number of rocks equal to your proficiency bonus with the bonus action, so you can get up to 2 to 6 of these at once. And you regain all expended uses after you finish a long rest. So in general, this is allowing you to just have the ability to just pick up a rock whenever you want, whenever you need a range option, and just yeet it, and then knock something prone, which I would like to point out, this is very good if you're dealing with flying enemies, because knocking flying enemies prones knocks them out of the sky. They literally fall out of the sky to the ground, which means that if you are a martial character and you hate flying characters and you don't have like Battlemaster Trick Attack, this is a good feat to take if you are just miffed at things flying around you all the time and you just want to be able to knock them to the ground. That, and there's also the last thing down here, Cavernous Sight. You gain Dark Vision, outdoor range of 60 feet. If you already have Dark Vision, you gain an additional 60 feet, up to 120 feet. I don't know why it's 60 feet. I remember Gloomstalker has a similar thing, and it's only an additional 30 feet. But hey, you know, getting an additional, like, up to 120 feet Dark Vision is kind of nutty, especially with the races that actually already have a base 120 feet of Dark Vision. Actually, if you really want to be kind of silly, just become a Twilight Domain Cleric. You have 300 feet of Dark Vision. Just use this, and, you know, you just have a 360 degree feet of Dark Vision. So, you know, there you go. Just, you could see forever in darkness. Outlands Envoy. 4th level Signs of the Outer Plane feat. Increase your ability score by 1 to a maximum of 20, so any ability score increase, that's kind of nice. Crossroad Emissary, you learn the Misty Step spell and Tongue spell. Cast each of these spells using this feat without a spell slot, and you must finish a long rest before you cast the spell in this way again. When you cast Tongues using the feat, you require no material components, so I guess you can kind of just do it for free. You can also cast these spells with using your spell slots when you have the appropriate level, and the spell cast ability is the one chosen for the feat increase. So basically, this is just adding Misty Step and Tongues to your spellcasting ability, if you have one. If not, you're getting a couple free castings on top of that as well. So Misty Step and Tongues. Misty Step is a very good spell. Tongues, situational, but still a very good spell to use when you need to use it. Weirdly enough, this kind of reminds me a lot of the Fey Touched feat, because that gives you a choice of your second spell and Misty Step. So it feels like it steps on its toes quite a lot. Actually, I'm gonna have to look that up really quickly. How much does it step on its toes? Okay, so here's the thing. It does step on its toes quite a lot, but Tongues is a 3rd level spell, which is way above what you could possibly pick with Fey Touch. So if you want to just get that and a spell that is of slightly more consequence, then there you go. Outlands Envoy for you. Planar Wanderer, 4th level sign of the Outer Planes feat. You can draw upon the forces of the multiverse, survive extreme cosmic extremes, and travel to infinite realms. You gain these benefits. Planar Adaptation, you finish a long rest and you gain resistance to either acid, cold, or fire damage. Well, it's an interchangeable damage resistance, albeit it's limited to very much just acid, cold, and fire. So sure, fire is pretty decent, cold is decent, and acid is actually quite useful when it pops up because it always sucks. Portal Cracker, your experience with portals allows you to operate them without the proper portal key. I know that that's something to do with the fact that portal keys are kind of necessary in order to actually interact with portals correctly. I believe this is Spelljammer related. Hilariously, it reminds me of my first campaign where I used an item literally called the portal key, and I had no idea that was even canon to D&D. So hey, look at that. I was way ahead of my times, I guess. As an action, you can concentrate on a portal that you're aware of that is within 5 feet of you, make a DC 20 Wisdom Survival check. On a failure, you take 3d8 force damage. Oh, that's not great. You can't use the feature on the portal again until you finish a long rest, so 8 hours passing. On a success, you can then force the close to either open or close for 1 hour. And during that duration, the portal closed in this way does not respond to its portal key unless a creature employing the key can succeed on an Intelligence Arcana DC 20 check. So basically, you can use this feat to forcibly open or close a portal, even if you don't have the key and somebody else did have the key. So you just basically gain control of that portal without them having to make some insane check to try and get past it. So, I mean, unless portals become, like, extremely prevalent all of a sudden, this is extremely niche and I have no idea why it's here. Portal Sense, you know the direction of the last planar portal that you used, and while you and the portal are on the same plane of existence. Moreover, as an action, you can detect the location of any portals within 30 feet of you that aren't behind total cover. Once you detect a portal in this way, you can't use this faction again until you finish a long rest. What is this feat and why does it suck so much? Okay, I'm not gonna lie. You can detect the presence of a portal, but it has to be within 30 feet of you and not behind total cover. Are you just telling me that you are blind and can't see it? Why do you need this? If it's behind total cover, that means it's behind a wall. If it's not behind a total wall, then why can't... You should be able to see it, unless it's like just hidden from you, you don't know it's there. That's insanely stupid. And once you detect a portal this way, you're literally locked out of it for a long rest. So at least you could do it, you could spam it until it actually works. But if your campaign doesn't have portals in it, just sort of like with this part of the feat up here, it's completely pointless. This whole feat is literally just hinging on the fact that you get an interchangeable damage resistance, which isn't very good to begin with. And it's all locked behind a 4th level feat that requires another feat in order to get it. This is a campaign feat. No one is ever going to take this otherwise, I swear. Righteous Inheritor, 4th level sign of the Outer Planes. Good Outer Planes feat. There you go. Ability score increase for any ability score that you get, and Soothe the Pain. Whenever you or another creature that you can see within 30 of you takes damage, you can use a reaction to dull the pain by 1d10 plus your proficiency bonus. You can use benefit enough times to get a proficiency bonus, and you regain spend uses after a long rest. Basically, you reduce damage when somebody nearby you don't want to get hurt gets hurt, and the 1d10 plus your proficiency bonus is actually a decent amount to chunk off, basically, assuming you roll well, and you get 2 to 6 uses of it as a reaction. I mean, it's a bit much that this is a 4th level feat again that requires a whole other feat in order to get it, but I don't think this is actually bad. I do think that being able to help protect your allies is something that they are going to appreciate you for, and if you're going into the Protector playstyle, this, as long as it's not competing with your reaction on any other things, I think that this is genuinely okay. I think the requirement for it is a bit ridiculous, but I don't think it's that bad. Runecarver Apprentice. I'm pretty certain this was just in the last Unearthed Arcana. I don't know if anything's actually changed, but I'm going to read through it anyway because I barely even remember anything from that Unearthed Arcana. You learn the Comprehend Languages spell, which you can cast without expending a spell slot, which you have to finish a long rest before you cast it again this way. You can also cast it using spell slots. So basically you just gain that spell in a free casting of it. That's kind of nice because Comprehend Languages is a nice spell to have when you need it. You also know 2 runes from the rune table down below, and you can imbue a non-magical weapon, armor, or piece of clothing, which do keep in mind, non-magical means that anything that's a +1 weapon or armor, you can't use this on. But hey, at least that you can do it with that until that point. You temporarily learn 1 first level spell based upon the rune that gets inscribed upon the rune table, blah, 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 until you finish a long rest, you can change it. Actually, no, you can't change it. I mean, screw me for whatever the heck I'm talking about. You pick the 2 runes and you're stuck with those 2 runes. The runes just fade over a long rest. Hey, you can tell I'm doing it live. The runes are Death for Ray of Sickness, Dragon for Chromatic Orb, Enemy for Disguise Self, Friend for Speak with Animals, Journey, Longstrider, King, Command, Mountain, Entangle, Sacred, Sanctuary, and that's it. Sorry, I just want to make sure there wasn't any other ones there. So looking over these spells, Ray of Sickness is a bad spell. It just straight up is. Chromatic Orb is a great spell, especially because you can probably cast these spells using it without needing to require material components. The material component for Chromatic Orb is like an expensive diamond, which a lot of first level players don't have, because this is a first level spell. Disguise Self, kind of convenient to have. Speak with Animals, can be convenient to have. Long Strider, definitely something that's convenient to have on very specific instances, I believe. Command, very good spell. Entangle, pretty good spell. Sanctuary, also pretty good spell. While you are wearing or carrying the rune-marked object, you can cast a spell associated with it off of the rune once without using a spell slot or material components. That is very convenient to have, especially in the case of Chromatic Orb. And you can also cast a spell while using any spell slots that you have. So you will need the material component for any additional castings, but for the free one you don't, which is very nice, especially on martials. Your spellcasting ability for this feat is Intelligence, Wisdom, or Charisma. You can choose when you select the feat. And each time you gain a level in this, you can replace one of the runes that you know with a different one of the runes type. So if you pick a bad one, you can at least swap it out, but it's always when you gain a level. It's not after a long rest, so it's not really that flexible. Overall, I do think that there is decent options here, but I feel like if you're playing as a spellcaster, if you want any of these spells, you're just going to take them and you will probably be able to cast them. If you're not a spellcaster, which I believe is what this is leaning in towards, this gives you quite a lot of extra spells to use, but you could also just take Magic Initiate and use it that way. Especially because this isn't locking you in to be able to cast these without using the mental ability scores anyway. I don't know how good this is, but at the very least, it's rune magic, which has a great flavor to it of itself, and you do get to have multiple pickings of it. So you get 2 of them at once, and you can always have them equipped and ready to go at 2 at once, which is convenient for a martial as well. I'm not gonna lie, I don't really know how good this feat actually is. At the very least, it doesn't have the requirement that the other feats actually have. So it's not like it's requiring you to be at 4th level or anything like that. This could be a 1st level feat if you actually want it. Or it could come with a background, which I'm pretty certain this one is actually tied to a background. Yes, of course, I'm being silly. Of course it's tied to the background. It's tied to the rune carver background. So getting this for free as a part of your background, I get why it's not necessarily that good, because level 0 feats basically shouldn't necessarily be that good. I call them level 1 feats, but that's really only variant human that even has a chance to be able to pick one of those up. So would this be a variant human feat that you pick up? Absolutely not. But if this is a feat that you get as a part of your background, you're trying to lean into all of this and the feats that kind of build upon this, because I believe there are feats that build upon this rune cover thing, this probably has some merit to you. Not a whole lot of merit, but I definitely has something. Rune Carver Adept. Hey, there's the one I was talking about. Literally 4th level and comes off of the last feat that we just looked at. Increase one of your ability scores up by 1. Oh, actually, I just reread this. This increases the ability score that you increased with the previous feat. Whenever you cast a spell from the rune spell table, so any one of these particular ones down here, the magic associated with the table is marked on an object with the Rune Carver Apprentice feat. You can evoke the runic power granting you one of the benefits. So it enhances the spell that you cast. You get one of these 3 choices here for battle runes, healing runes, and runic winds. Choose one creature you can see within 30 feet of yourself. Until the end of the creature's turn, it has advantage on the next attack roll that it makes. That's pretty nice. Healing runes. Choose one creature that you see within 30 feet of yourself. That creature gains temporary hit points equal to your level. That's actually quite a decent amount of temporary hit points, because remember, that's up to 20 hit points that you get. And you can cast those spells each once for free. So that's 2 uses of that. That's an additional up to, like, on an ideal max level character, up to 40 temporary hit points you can just dish out as a part of anything else that you're casting for free on that turn. Albeit it's technically a 1st level spell, so he's kind of burning it, but you can do that just at the start of the day. So if you want to just have a little bit of extra shielding going into anything that you're doing, that's not bad. Runic Winds. Choose one creature that you see within 30 feet of yourself. Until the end of the creature's turn, its movement doesn't provoke opportunity attacks, and its walking speed increases by 10 feet. That's also very convenient, especially on a spellcaster, because then you can cast one of your spells, and then you can cast it on yourself, because this can at least hit yourself with this, or if somebody's caught up really close to an enemy that needs to be able to get away from it, you can benefit them as well. Gives them a little bit of extra movement speed, and they can just get away on their turn. That's genuinely quite good. And the fact that you don't have to commit to any one of these 3, you can just pick it in the moment when you actually need it, makes this feat quite solid overall. You can evoke the power a number of times you go proficiency bonus, but no more than once per spell you cast. Wait a minute, so I just have to realize something here as I look back over this. Oh, there's actually quite a lot of flexibility in this that I completely missed. Whenever you cast a spell from Runic Spell Table, or a spell from the magic associated with the spell marked on one of the objects of your Rune Carver Apprentice feat. So that probably means, if I look back over here, Chromatic Orb, I believe, is an evocation spell. That means that if you ever cast an evocation spell, you get to pick one of these benefits, because there's more charges here than there are the free castings that you get off of the rune spell. That's kind of nice. That means that even though you get this as a level 0 feat, which isn't necessarily that good for taking the background, this extra feat that you can take later at 4th level genuinely bolsters you in a meaningful way. I actually quite like that. That's a nice stacking to go on top of it, especially with how flexible it is. If it literally didn't have this sentence basically right here, I would say that this isn't a very good feat to take, and I don't understand why you would take it other than just for the flavor. That's quite a lot of flexibility that you can get out of it. And all of these effects, which you don't dedicate yourself to, can definitely have uses during any time you're casting the spell. Whether, outside of combat, during combat, especially some which favors it being during combat. This is great. This is more of a surprise for me than I realized. Scion on Elemental Air. You'll learn the Minor Illusion cantrip. It's a bit weird, it's Minor Illusion, but hey, it kind of works. Wind's Glide. As a bonus action, you gain a flying speed equal to your walking speed until the end of your turn. Oh, great, more flying characters. And while you're airborne to the end of your turn, you can then fall. You can use a bonus action number of times equal to proficiency bonus, regaining expected uses after a long rest. So, this is just a feat that you can take, and there's no... Yeah, this is a feat you could take as a part of a background, but there's no requirements for this one at all. There's no requirements for this. So, any character could take a feat that just allows them the ability to fly, albeit even temporarily. Kind of like the race that we just looked at. That scares me to no end. Scion of the Elemental Earth. Same, no restrictions there at the very least. It literally doesn't say that it requires the background. You can just take this whenever you want. Okay, you learn Druidcraft. Okay, that kind of makes sense. There's a variety of different non-damaging cantrips that you can take there. You also get Earth and Shield. As a bonus action, you conjure forth a Bulwark of Earth that provides half cover to you or a creature of your choice within 30 feet of you. The Bulwark remains to the start of your next turn, and you can create a Bulwark a number of times to go proficiency bonus and regain all expended use after a long rest. That's cool! Now keep in mind, the Bulwark doesn't strap yourself to the character that you cast it around. It's literally creating cover on the position of the character, so they gain the benefit as long as they stay in that position. But it's a +2 AC to attacks and dexterity saving throws, because remember, cover does that as well. And it lasts for a whole round that you can do as a bonus action on your turn. So you can give yourself, if you're planning on not moving, or an ally who might need some benefit because they're in a sticky spot. I really like that. That's a really fun defensive feature that you can use for yourself or other people, and that's just cool. Sign of Elemental Fire. Hey, we're going through all the elements right now. You get Dancing Lights. It's a bit weird. It's not a fire damaging spell, but sure, all the other ones haven't been fire damaging. Oh, Speak of the Devil. Produce Flame. Yeah, there we go. Right there. Damaging spell. You can cast it there using spellcast ability chosen by this feat. You can cast Produce Flames as normal, and you can cast it as a bonus action, a number of times equal to proficiency bonus, regaining all expended use after a long rest. Well, actually, considering the fact that this is a cantrip and it will scale with your level regardless of having the ability to cast spells, because that's the way that cantrips work, they're based on your character's level, the fact that you can cast it as an action and Produce Flame, even though it's not Firebolt, it has more applications, I think, than Firebolt outside of combat, and it only is, it's a D8 damage. Firebolt's a D10. You're doing, on average, at most 4 less damage at maximum level. It's not that much of a difference. But the ability to cast it as a bonus action number of times limitedly, that's kind of cool, because you know what that means, right? You can cast Produce Flame as a bonus action number of times equal to your proficiency bonus. There's nothing stopping you from casting it as an action, so you can literally cast the thing twice per turn. That's like Quicken Spell meta magic for cantrips, specifically on Produce Flame. That's very, very useful for a lot of people who don't have a range option, or spellcasters that just want to be able to zug something down with Produce Flame. That's really cool. I actually didn't think this was actually all that exciting. I kind of take that back. It would be, if this was Firebolt, this would be amazing, just getting a little bit of extra damage out there, and the fact that Firebolt, I believe, has more range than Produce Flame. But this is cool. I really like that. I kind of wish that there were ways to get this mechanic onto other cantrips, I'm not gonna lie. Sign of the Elemental Water. Thaumaturgy. That's the non-damaging one you're getting. It's a bit weird it's Thaumaturgy, because that one I always feel is more demonic in nature than anything else, but whatever. As a bonus action, you create a forceful surge of water directed at a creature within 15 feet of you. The target must succeed on a strength saving throw. That's a pretty nice saving throw to actually resist. And on a failed save, you can push the creature 10 feet away from you or pull it 10 feet towards you. The water then vanishes immediately afterwards. You can do this a number of times to get a proficiency bonus, recharging after a long rest. It's a battlefield manipulator for you to be able to push or pull a creature away from you. That has a lot of uses. As a melee person, you can pull somebody off of somebody else and pull them in towards you, which is where you want them. As a spellcaster, you use this to push somebody away. You could also use this, literally, to pull or push somebody off of a cliff. Because after all, as a bonus action, it's just a bonus action. It doesn't trigger off an attack. You could just point at a creature and go, make the saving throw. So it's you could even use this to pull them off of a cliff that they're up against, or pull them off of a ledge even if they're on high ground above you. That has genuine uses. Part of me feels like the Elemental Monk is crying deep inside that it doesn't have something quite this cool. I know it has Water Whip, but this is quite a bit more free than Water Whip. And I like this. That's very cool. I do think that has a lot of uses for it. I think that battlefield manipulation, especially with maneuvering people's positions, is definitely a fun thing to play with that not a lot of features are doing, and a lot of the new stuff they're doing in UA is starting to lean a bit into that. I do quite like it, and I think that it has a lot of potential to be useful. Sign of the Outer Planes. Hey, we've been reading about this a whole freaking lot during this whole thing, so let's see what this is all about. No requirements for this feat, comes for free with the background. Choose a type of plane listed from the planar infusions table below. Your choice gives you resistance to a damage type and the ability to cast a cantrip specific to the table. You can cast this cantrip without material components, and your spellcasting ability is Intelligence, Wisdom, or Charisma, which you choose when you select the feat. So, Astral Planes, you get Psychic and Message. Chaotic Outer Plane, you get Necrotic and Minor Illusion. Evil Outer Plane, you get Necrotic and Chill Touch. Good Outer Plane, you get Radiant Sacred Flame, all the way up here. Lawful Outer Plane, you get Radiant and Guidance, and Outer Lands, you get Psychic and Mage Hand. So basically there's 2 for Radiant, 2 for Psychic, and 2 for Necrotic, and you get either, for Psychic, you get Message and Guidance. Both great cantrips to have, especially on the Psychic kind of lines of things. Necrotic, you get Minor Illusion or Chill Touch. Chill Touch is a very underrated cantrip, but I know a lot of people, or personally, a lot of people that really like that cantrip. And Minor Illusion is just a fun spell to have as well. And Sacred Flame and Guidance are also just great ones to have as well. One's obviously an attack spell over the other one, but Sacred Flame is a pretty good attack cantrip in general. So you just pick up a damage resistance to a very uncommon damage type and a cantrip. And then you get to pair this with some of the other feats that we've seen up until this point, which, if you excuse me, I'm going to quickly go read over just so I can see if there's anything super noteworthy you're getting out of it. So in me checking over all this stuff, I actually read this part about basic feats, which is talking about the fact that if the DM decides to allow any of your backgrounds in this section, all characters in the campaign gain access to a bonus feat. If you select one of these backgrounds, you gain a bonus feat specified in that background. If the background you choose doesn't have a feat, you gain a bonus feat of your choice from the list provided below, which is the Elemental, Air, Earth, Fire, and Water, or you get the Skilled feat or the Tough feat. With any background at all. So literally they're going to make it standard with the fact that all backgrounds moving forward are going to give you some kind of feat, whether it be Elemental, a skill-based feat, which just gives you more skills on top of what your background's probably already giving you, or just the fact that you will gain more HP over time. That's kind of crazy. I do think that backgrounds should give you at least some kind of feat, so I think I'm genuinely kind of okay with that, but I completely missed this, and I think that's significant. It should be worth mentioning. Hey, so I'm back from the past, and just after reading over a lot of the feats that actually link directly into the Sign of the Outer Planes, I will admit, like, the fact that I did say good things about those feats, and it's true. There are a few feats that are definitely sleepers, especially the one that is specifically to portals and such like that, or the one that gives you Misty Step and Tongues, which I don't think is super the most exciting thing and such like that, but especially with a lot of the martial ones that are out there, which a lot of martial characters would get a lot of use out of, especially if they decided to go that way. I definitely think that being able to get just a little bit of an extra cantrip and damage resistance and then like be able to open up those options to you later on is something that is kind of cool. It at least makes it a little bit more unique with the fact that you're committing to those feat trees more than taking the more generic feats that are available to people just all on a whim all over the place. So it probably helps with a little bit of build diversity, the fact that you have to commit to it for the long term. Some people might not like that. I personally think it's kind of okay. It's just a matter of like if in practice if it's going to be clumsy or not. Soul of the Storm Giant, 4th level Strike of the Giants. You increase your Intelligence, Wisdom, or Charisma by 1, and you get Maelstrom Aura. As a bonus action, you surround yourself in an aura of magical wind and lightning that extends 10 feet from you in every direction, but not behind total cover. The aura lasts until the start of your next turn or until you are incapacitated. While your aura is active, attack rolls against you have disadvantage, and whenever a creature starts turn within the aura, you can force them to make a strength saving throw. On a failed save, the creature's speed is halved until the start of the next turn, and you can use bonus action options equal to proficiency bonus, recharging after a long rest. Okay, so no wonder this one requires the Storm Giant feat, because this is a very good feat. Up 2 to 6 times as a bonus action, you can create a 10-foot maelstrom around yourself that your cover ignores, but whatever, most things that are attacking you aren't going to be behind total cover, and attack rolls against you have disadvantage. That's really good. Even though it only lasts for, there it is, start of your next turn. So for 1 turn, everything against you has disadvantage, which is kind of like casting the shield spell, because it's actually, well, is it? Yeah, it actually is, because disadvantage equates to roughly the same mathematical outcome as a +5 to your AC. And the fact that the creature within you gets massively slowed, that is a really good martial lockdown ability. If you want to make it so somebody really can't escape very easily from your grasp, and then if they have any option but to just try and attack you and they have disadvantage, that's kind of like almost like taunting somebody to stay in against you without like specifically locking them in against you. That's a very good feat, and definitely something that I believe a lot of people in martials are going to get a lot of use out of. Strike of the Giants. Choose one of the kinds of Giants powers listed below. As a bonus action, you would call upon the power of your giant magic and imbue your attacks with additional power. The next time you hit a target with a melee weapon or thrown weapon attack, that's probably leading into the giant barbarian class, within the next minute, the attack has the additional effect depending on the origin of your giant magic. Hill Giant. It takes an extra 1d6 of the weapon's type, and the creature must succeed on a strength saving throw or be knocked prone. So you just yeet somebody down really hard out of nowhere. That has its uses. Stone Giant. The target takes an extra 1d6 force damage, and the creature must succeed on a strength saving throw or be pushed 10 feet away from you in a straight line. A knockback ability. Again, has its uses. Frost Giant. The target takes an extra 1d6 cold damage. A little bit. No, it's actually the exact same. What the heck's wrong with me? Cold damage, and if the target is a creature, it must succeed on a constitution saving throw, or its speed is reduced to 0? Why do all the other ones only reduce your speed by like half? Why does one completely shut you down? Fire Giant. It just takes an extra d8 of fire damage. Oh boy, an extra average of like 1 damage compared to all the other abilities with no secondary effect on a very commonly resistant immune damage type. I think this one needs something. Cloud Giant. The creature takes an extra 1d4, that's quite a bit less, damage, and the creature must succeed on a wisdom saving throw, and you become invisible to it until the start of your next turn. Okay, so you are not invisible. You are invisible to the target of your attack, and it's 1d4 thunder damage. I can see this being very good on, believe it or not just spellcasters who needed to get out of dodge to be able to go invisible and run away from something. This is kind of good if you were to do this on basically, I would say almost a rogue, but the thing is the rogue would then have to do an offhand attack kind of thing. It would basically have to be a dual wielding rogue or have the crossbow, hand crossbow feat basically allow it to shoot it twice. Because basically you hit it the first time if you don't have attack or advantage and you're not going to be able to proc sneak attack, you can then do this to proc your advantage to be able to get it that turn. There are better ways of doing that on the rogue, but I mean, like, it's definitely an avenue for it. Ultimately, I think this is a get out of jail free card ability, especially for squishy spellcasters, which I think is very good, and that ability is probably worth it for the D4. Storm Giant. The target takes an extra 1d6 lightning damage, and the target must succeed on a constitution saving throw or has disadvantage on attack rolls until the start of your next turn. Man, Storm ability is just like locking people in around them. That is a very good ability, and especially good for like locking people in against you. And the thing is, like, this doesn't actually lock people in against you, because the thing is, you want to be able to hold people in against you. This is very good if the spellcaster, again, has somebody in on them, and they want to do maybe a little bit more extra damage, and just make it so that way the person trying to bash their face and has a harder time of doing it. The really good thing about it is actually all attack rolls. It's not just their next attack rolls. That's quite good, honestly. You can use these bonus actions 9 times equal to proficiency bonus to regain all expended uses when you finish a long rest. That's quite good. Now, if I remember correctly, doesn't Strike of the Giants have a feat that requires it? Yeah, all of the extra enhancing abilities that the other elemental fire giants get actually require this feat, which is actually good to see, because that basis feat you get from a background, and that's a great feat to get for a background, actually. That is very free, and to be able to enhance upon it in the particular element that you want, that's just really, really good. That is a very nice skill tree to get, especially for, like, it can be useful on rangers or spellcasters and melee characters, but especially on a melee character, that's quite nice to have. Vigor of the Hill Giant. 4th level Strike of the Giants feature Hill Giant feat. You increase your constitution score by 1, so you're locked into just that one. And Bulwark. You are subjected to the effect that would move you at least 5 feet and knock you prone. You can use your reaction to steady yourself. You are neither moved nor knocked prone. That's a very good frontline ability. Oh, and okay, so this is a bit weird. I have no idea why the heck this blob of text is here. It belongs somewhere over here. It's throwing me for a massive loop because I'm not reading this the same way it's supposed to. But yeah, the other part of the ability is actually up here. Iron Stomach. Whenever you eat as a part of a short rest and spend 1 or more hit dice to regain hit points, you regain additional hit points equal to your constitution modifier plus your proficiency bonus. This whole thing right in here, that's all just a very good feat to take if you are a martial character and want to be a frontliner. That's giving you the ability to recover HP off of rests much more effectively, and you get the ability to just frontline and resist being moved around a lot. If you want to be able to lock people down next to you and you want them to not be able to shove you around or get you off of them, or if you want to be able to stand firmly between you and the people you're trying to protect, that's a nice feat to have. That enables a completely different style of play that is a little bit more in your control than what some other frontliners might be able to provide for the back line. Okay, we're finally at the spells, and I know there's not quite as many, but this immediately makes me concerned. Spells inspired by the deck of many things. Oh dear God, what are we in for now? Antagonize is a 3rd level enchantment spell with 1 action, range of 30 feet, verbal, somatic, and material, playing cards depicting a rogue, instantaneous. You whisper magical words and you antagonize 1 creature of your choice within range. The target must succeed on a wisdom saving throw. On a failed save, it takes 4d4 psychic damage and must immediately use its reaction, if available, to make a melee attack against another creature of your choice that you can see. It's weird that it's you can see and not they can see, but whatever. If no other creature is within range, the target is disadvantaged in its next attack roll until the start of its next turn. Can be upcast for an additional d4 for higher spell slot levels. So here's the thing. If you remember Vicious Mockery, this is very much just Vicious Mockery, except it has the added caveat of you can tell the creature to smack somebody next to it that you can see. Because this does the same damage as Vicious Mockery at max character level. It's just 4d4 psychic damage. It's also a wisdom saving throw. And if it doesn't otherwise work, it's just disadvantage on the next attack roll. So not even all attack rolls, just the next one till the start of your next turn. And it still uses your action to cast the spell, just like Vicious Mockery. So aside from this, which is a very nice ability to have, to be able to smack another creature with a possibly devastating melee attack, this is otherwise Vicious Mockery, but it's a 3rd level spell? I'm sure this has its uses, but because I hate Vicious Mockery, you guys all know I really hate Vicious Mockery. I don't think it's nearly as good as people give it credit for, because I'm sure bards use it. I'm sure bards can enjoy using the spell because, spoiler alert, bards get it. Why? This thing should probably do a little bit more damage, I feel, to warrant the 3rd level spell. Or the effect of being able to have it smack another creature has the potential to be really, really strong. I know it has the effect of being really, really strong, but like, that's a 3rd level spell. And if it doesn't do this one effect right here, that's a huge waste of a 3rd level spell. Speaking of a waste of a 3rd level spell, we have House of Cards. Yes, I've already read all this and I have some choice words to say about it. Casting time of 1 minute, remember that. 3rd spell, remember that. Range of touch, not very important. Requires all of these components here. Nothing costs anything, so it's fine. Duration of 24 hours. Still remember, takes a minute to cast, and it's a 3rd level spell. I'm going to drive that into the ground because the spell is absolutely garbage. You touch the ground, and it raises an enormous playing card structure, which rises out of the center, harmlessly lifting you and any other creatures within the area. The House of Cards is a square base of 30 feet on each side and has 3 floors to it, each with a 10-foot ceiling within of it. So that your 4 as you count it, 30 feet tall. The second floor is 20 feet wide, bottom floor is 30 feet wide, and the top floor is 10 feet wide. There are ramparts that connect the interiors of each floor with empty door frames connecting the interiors of each level within it, and the creatures inside or on top of it have half cover. That's all really kind of good, and I kind of like the fact that the description of the spell really does paint a great picture of actually the physical dimensions of the spell, because I can only imagine that without having Wizards of the Coast provide a miniature for all of us, we'd have no idea what the heck the shape actually is, canonically speaking. Kind of reminds me of Mordecai's Magnificent Mansion or whatever the heck that is. I genuinely don't remember or know if that has any kind of canonical specific shape to it or anything that way. However, this is why I'm driving in how bad the spell is this paragraph right here. Each card that comprises the house is 5 feet wide and 10 feet tall and very fragile. The card has an AC of 10, 1 hit point, and the card's immune to poison and psychic damage. What would he freaking do? Reducing the card to 0 hit points destroys it, and every card that gets destroyed rolls 1d6, and if it rolls a 5 or 6, the house immediately collapses and the spell ends, and when the spell ends, all cards immediately vanish. This is a 3rd level spell, which takes a minute to cast, to create venerable half cover and slight high ground, or like just basic cover for you, that can be undone by a single point of damage. Like, yeah, sure, you might think to yourself that concentration spells have like the same nuance, the fact that any damage done to the caster does that as well. You don't even have to hit the caster for this. And if you AoE, if the enemy literally AoEs this and hits multiple cards at a time, every single card is rolling this d6. And that's a 33% chance that the spell immediately ends. And reminder, this is a 3rd level spell. You're telling me you want to cast a 3rd level spell to make a flimsy piece of paper defense structure for yourself? You can't even use it during combat in the middle for any way of like a diversion or tactics or trying to get anything. It's just literally like, this is meant to be a defensive structure. So you don't even really want to use this outside of combat for non-combative reasons. And there's other structures you can make using spells that provide better shelter than this. I have no idea who the heck made this spell. Whoever you, if you're working at the Wizard Coast, you should be goddamn ashamed of yourself. This is garbage in a trap, and this should never, ever be printed like this. This is garbage. I'm sorry, I just really wanted to drive it how absolutely infuriated I was when I read that. It really wasted my time. Spirit of Death is a cool spell. As a 4th level necromancy spell with a casting time of 1 action, which is kind of convenient within 60 feet of you, it does have a caveat of having a very costly material components that thankfully isn't consumed. Requires concentration and lasts for up to 1 minute. You literally summon the Reaper that hounds somebody. It comes up within 10 feet of the target, so it's always immediately basically right next to them, though not within the area of opportunity attack, which is, fair, I guess, in that regard. The spirit disappears if it is reduced to 0 HP, or if the spell ends, so, like any other normal summoning spell. And the Reaper that you have there shares your initiative count, takes its turn immediately after yours, so basically this operates like any other summoning spell, taking the dodge action if you don't give it any commands. And it does get upcast at higher level spell slots. Here's the stat block for the Reaper Spirit, which is pretty decent. I haven't compared this actually to the other summoning spells that you get from Tasha's, which I do like a lot. I prefer those way more than like Conjure Animals, Conjure Woodland Beings, or any of those spells, because I think those are genuine messes and a huge pain in the ass to deal with at the table. Just having a prepared one variable stat block is kind of nice. Now that said, if I remember correctly, Summon Undead is a higher level spell than this. No, I actually just looked it up. Summon Undead is a 3rd level spell, and you get to choose a variety of different forms of your Undead Spirit to take. This one you don't get to choose, and it is a 4th level spell, which, to be fair, considering this typo up here, makes me wonder if it's actually 3rd level or 4th level or not. It's probably 4th level. Also, by the way, this stat array makes me laugh hysterically. It's just 16 across the board. This thing doesn't give a single crap what its stats are. It's immune to necrotic poison, makes sense. Immune to charm, fright, and paralysis poison. Has dark vision, all that stuff makes sense. Incorporeal movement can literally go through walls, and with its fly speed can actually go through about 10 feet of wall pretty safely. That's kind of cool. And it also knows where its quarry is all the time, which means that if you sick it on somebody to try to run away from you, it's just gonna hound them, especially because this thing has a decent fly speed. It has a multi-attack, which does scale with the spell's level, albeit rounded down, so not quite as well. It has a melee attack, uses your spell attack modifier, deals necrotic damage to the target. It's a decent amount of damage. And it has paralyzing fear. Unfortunately, it doesn't actually do the paralysis condition, it only does the frightened condition. But it does do it for up to 1 minute with repeated saves trying to end it early, so it can last for a pretty decent amount of time, albeit still a once per day ability. You're probably gonna get it out when the creature gets summoned, so this is still gonna play a part in it. Overall, I do think it's very cool to just summon the literal Grim Reaper on somebody. I think that's very fun. Whether or not it's actually that practical because of the cost components and the fact that it is probably going to be a 4th level spell kind of remains to be seen. I know some of the summoning spells are not 3rd level or 4th level or even 5th level, but I have to check and see if this actually compares to it quite even as much. I still prefer these way more than the older summoning spells, that's for sure. Spray of Cards, a 2nd level conjuration spell, which is a 15-foot cone. You spray a bunch of cards from your hand, which is a hysterical thing in itself, and you choose one of the following effects for the card. In the 15-foot cone, they make a wisdom saving throw, or they're blinded, or each creature within there gets cut up by it, taking 2d10 damage. Is that really it? Yeah, it gets upcast for the damage that you can do, but other than that, the blinded effect is only until the end of the next turn. So if you need some area of control within the cone, or if you want to be able to deal a little bit of extra damage, or have the flexibility to choose literally between both, that's kind of nice. And for a 2nd level spell, sure, I can get behind that. It's a little bit more costly than, for example, Burning Hands, but it's giving you a little bit more to do than Burning Hands provides, and the damage is still okay. So you know what? Spray of Cards, I love that spell. That's funny, and I really like that. Summon Warrior Spirit, a 3rd level conjuration spell. Oh, we're back down to 3rd level now. Range of 90 feet, that's quite a bit further to be able to cast it in. 1 action, has the same costly material component, albeit a little bit cheaper. Concentration for up to 1 hour. Wow, that lasts for a while. Call forth the spirit of a warrior that can take upon, I think actually I just realized it's based upon the Knight card from the deck of many things, which basically summons a random Yahoo out of nowhere who goes like, "My lord, I'm here to protect you," which is very funny in amongst itself, but I mean, like, this is very much kind of funny. It makes me wonder if this is actually going to be tied directly to that thing, because that would be kind of convenient, so that way we know what the stat block is supposed to be. I don't know if it actually mentions it or not. I'm getting off topic. The warrior can take upon the form of a barbarian, fighter, or a monk. I'm very interested to see if this is actually going to hold up or not. The warrior resembles a humanoid, approximately of whatever class it actually has there. It is spears when it drops 0 points or when the spell ends. It has the same shtick and caboodle as all the other spellcasters that when they summon a creature, it has all those simple control things and can't get upcast. So let's take a look at this warrior spirit. It's an undead. That's a surprise. I guess it is a spirit. Has a decent armor class that scales. Oh, it gains a bonus only if it's actually a fighter. And it gains hit points as if barbarian fighter, and if you're a monk, you gain less hit points. So you have less AC and less HP. That's looking great for the monk right now. As a speed, it has 30 feet, 40 feet if it's a monk. Oh boy, it's a little bit faster if a monk. What a great way to do it there. And you get a very understandable stat array for a martial character. You actually get decent wisdom on this, but the intelligence and charisma being down there, I mean, I feel like the intelligence would be lower than that, but you know what? Sure, it's an undead spirit. I can give it the negative in charisma. Why not? Saving throws for strength and dexterity. Resistance to poison. I guess it's because it's undead. And immunity to charm to poison. Makes sense. It's weird it's resistant to poison and not immune to it as an undead. But you know what? Sure. Maybe it's because it's resembling more of a human than a true undead. Its multi-attack scales in the same way as the Reaper does, so not quite as strong as the other ones because it's rounding down, but that's still okay. It gets Reckless Strike as a Barbarian, which basically means it's dealing a Great Axe's worth of damage, and you get Reckless Attack basically with this, because it locks an advantage for you and against you as well, which is very solid. Rallying Strike for the fighter, which is basically a short sword attack that you can do. Actually, this isn't a short sword attack. This has a 5 feet of range or a range of 20 to 50 feet. Wait, it's a melee or a ranged weapon attack. What weapon are they using? Is this like a throwing weapon? Or like a short bow that they could use in close quarters? Are they switching weapons in between it? I have a feeling that that's kind of what they're going for, is that this guy just kind of has whatever weapon he needs at the particular moment. So yeah, no, he just deals like averaging damage. And whenever he deals the damage, he gives 1d6 temporary hit points to a chosen creature. So basically, that's quite good. Just it gives you a little bit more flexibility and defensive focus than the other one, which is like purely offensive. That's kind of nice, especially because you don't have to be weighted down by the negative that this one carries with the advantage against it. All right, this is the fun part. Unarmed Strike for the monk. Melee reach, 1d4 plus 3 plus a spell bludgeoning damage. Must succeed on strike saving throw, or it is knocked prone. It's unfortunate. It's not stunning strike, which is not nearly as good. But knocking somebody prone over and over again does give you some element of control, albeit the damage is worse. And you are moving around a whole lot. At the plus side, the spirit can move in, punch, knock somebody prone, and then probably move away. Although it provoke opportunity attacks, it'll be at disadvantage because that's the way that works. And the other good thing is bonus action, which the thing can take is a flurry of blows, which means it can make an additional attack. So it gets one more attack compared to all of the other features. So it's like it's getting upcast a couple extra levels, which is kind of nice by comparison of the other ones. Albeit, a lot of people pointed out Fury Blows for the Monk gives you 2 extra attacks, and this one's only giving you 1. I will admit, for the fact that this one is significantly squishier than the other one for its HP and AC, if you're not going to let this be a stun, which I'm sure you're not doing that for a particular reason, because giving it infinite stunning strikes would be kind of silly, at least giving it the extra strike would probably bring it up to par with the other ones. But at the end of the day, I feel bad for the monk players when they stare at this, because now you can literally you can basically almost use a spell to summon a better monk than a player could almost genuinely play. I say almost, I'm just taking the piss out of it, but like, come on. This is kind of funny to me, because the monk needs some love. It genuinely does, and this makes it feel even worse. And if anything by the immense blankness on my screen has anything to tell me about, hey, look at that, I finally finished my review through the Unearthed Arcana. Wow, I kind of understand why I don't normally do this. In general, there's quite a lot that we went over here. We had a race, we had a subclass, we had a bunch of backgrounds that were tied to certain feats, opening up backgrounds to just gain feats in general, along with a certain unique niche of feats that are kind of tied to general backgrounds overall, and a whole bunch of feats. That was literally most of the video, and a few good spells, minus one, which we all know I genuinely really hated. I would say overall, the race is something I think thematically is very cool. It's very front-loaded and probably very strong and needs to have something dialed back a little bit for it. Even if like it gets all those features, but some of them were linked to like literally once per day, that would be like a way to dial it back a little bit that way. I just think it's a little front-loaded, the fact that it's like high AC, minimal rolls on certain things that it does, especially offensively or defensively, and flying. That's kind of crazy. The cleric subclass, I think it does an okay job. I think that the theme of fate is hit on the head kind of, because the idea of fate being mechanically bound to rolling the dice and manipulating how the dice are rolled is okay, and it doesn't step on the toes of the divination wizard. I do think it's actually kind of good. It doesn't inspire me a whole lot, no. I think it kind of inspires me about as much as the moon sorcerer, which came out quite a long time ago by now, had, and that didn't inspire me at all. Comparatively to like the dinosaur druid and the giant barbarian, those were super fun, even if they're not necessarily like fully fleshed out quite yet, because I think the giant one is great. I love that one a whole lot. I don't think it fits for me quite there. I think it has the potential though. It kind of just needs a little extra push, I think, to tighten up its design. Not to make it stronger. It doesn't need to be any stronger. It's totally functional right there as it is. As long as it has very notably, usefully applicable options, I think it will be a rockstar cleric subclass that isn't like another Peace or Twilight Domain. We do not need another Peace or Twilight Domain. Those are very strong. We don't need to have that be the new standard for power going forward. All of the backgrounds, I think, are totally fine for flavor. I do like the fact that they're kind of opening up the flavor of the backgrounds quite a bit in terms of just making it very loose for the characters, because we know that we like to make our own stories, and giving us feats with a background. I think that's pretty fair. It makes it so that way at least the people that are the munchkins that don't give an absolute toss about roleplay have a reason to give a little bit about their background, if even just to gain a feat, because then that at least brings in the whole circle for the circle of design for the backgrounds included in D&D. And at the very least, gives the DM something to throw a bone at for the metagamer who decides to take a certain background to at least go, hey, at least he kind of took this so I can roll with that from him since he's not going to play into it. The feats in general, I think there's a lot of very cool feats that are in there. I definitely think there's definitely a lot of love for martial characters. Martial characters are getting a lot out of this, I think. And certain spellcasters gain a lot of control options that they could get for kind of free since some of them are coming off of background feats as well. And if they want to go a little bit more into the elemental adept kind of side of things, that gives them a little bit more flavor that way. Definitely very sorceress vibing kind of things that way. Almost feels like we really need a primordial sorcerer at this point, which is something I've been saying for a very long time. The spells in general, I think, aside from House of Cards, which is an absolute garbage trap spell they should be ashamed they ever released, I do think that the spells have a decent use. I do think some of them are way more fun than others. And overall, I'm glad that they're kind of moving forward with the summoning spells being kind of like both a loose amalgamation of options that you can pick, and also are just singular creatures that you summon. I do think that that is a much more manageable thing to happen at the table, even if it's ultimately not nearly as good as swarming you with a whole bunch of other lesser, weaker creatures. I do think that, like, honestly, so many DMs just hate those spells because they're so annoying to deal with, myself included. So ultimately, very glad to see those going there. Overall, I'm very, like, warm on this Arcana. I think they did an okay job with it. I do think there's, like, some very serious stuff that they need to kind of poke at a bit more. And there's some stuff in here that's absolutely garbage. But overall, I think there's a lot of fun to be had with this. Kind of like how the Giants UA that came out last time had a lot of fun to be had with it, and I was really happy with that one. Sorry I didn't make a video on it, but I was very busy during that time period of my life. So yeah, those are my first impressions for the Wonders of the Multiverse. You're welcome.